I want to bring this moving camera from Wilmington full screen now, if we could. This is a ride along in Wilmington. So if you know Wilmington, town of about 115, 120,000 people, you have friends there. Wilmington is the inland town from Wrightsville Beach. So if you live in Wilmington and you go to the beach, you drive over the big coastal highway there and the big bridge over to Wrightsville, and that's where you spend weekends if you're lucky. So this is inland by about 8 miles, and it's our first really drive-along look like this to see what things are like. And it's great to see all these trees still standing. Certainly there are a lot of limbs in the road, having some connection problems there with the mobile hookup. I believe we're probably using a LiveU here, which is a piece of equipment that connects to internet signals and then broadcasts these live pictures. As you see a tree there split in half on the left, some debris down there on the right, and just the drive along gives us kind of an idea. You know, originally this storm was a Category 4. The meteorologist didn't see any way that it was going to weaken because there were really no steering currents, there was no wind shear or anything like that. Then 2 days ago in the afternoon, about 3 o'clock Eastern time, we were speaking with a pilot in a hurricane hunter plane. And he was in the southeast quadrant of the storm. And we were looking at it on the map and saying, man, it looks like that southeastern quadrant is having trouble. Sure enough, we got up to him and he said it's having an outflow problem. We're not sure what it's about, but the way that the water and the winds are coming out of that thing. Remember, the center of a hurricane, the eye of a hurricane is like as if you had a fireplace with a big chimney and all the heat and the smoke goes out the top. Well, that's the way it is with a hurricane in the eye. The winds go straight up there, and then the walls of the hurricane, of the eye of the hurricane, that's where the heaviest winds are. Well, they were having an outflow problem on the southeastern quadrant of that storm. Suddenly, within a few hours, the eye wall began to break down. We would later learn it was a bit of an eye wall replacement cycle, but a bunch of dry air from wind shear got into this storm. See a tree down there on the right? And that dry air and the wind shear began to diminish the intensity of this storm. So thank goodness this storm did weaken, even though the meteorologist didn't think it was going to, from a Category 4 down to a Category 3, then a Category 2, now a Category 1. That doesn't change the onshore flow, doesn't change the storm surge, doesn't change the rain that much, but it changed the wind. So imagine if this storm hadn't weakened and we'd had 140-mile-an-hour winds. This isn't good in Wilmington. There's certainly a lot of mess as the car drives along here at 13 minutes past 1 in the afternoon, but it's certainly not what it would have been from Category 4 winds. These trees in waterlogged earth after historic rains for them over the past couple of months. They've had more than 20 inches of rain over the past couple of months, which is just an extraordinary amount for this time of year. And then, of course, over the last day or two, some areas have had a year's worth of rain in 48 hours. But again, a little bit higher ground here. I'm kind of enjoying giving you this look around. For those of you who are familiar with Wilmington, again, it's about 8 miles off the coast, inland a little bit. It's on a body of water itself, but not on the Atlantic. And it gives us an idea of what neighborhood to neighborhood looks like. I'm not able to know, because I'm not intimately familiar with this town, but I'm not able to know exactly where we are, and the signal is not that clean. But you look at these houses on the right and the left, you don't see a lot of shingles off the roof. You see you don't see power lines down, at least not here. You see a few branches in the street. There's that white car on the right, the truck just ahead. No damage apparently to any of this. The traffic lights, see up there, the traffic lights are out because the power is certainly down. It looks like this truck has had to turn around because of that limb that's down in the street. It's either a limb or a small tree or something, but this truck has had to turn around. And there's no access through that way, so they're going to take a right here and back downhill, it looks like. See, all the power lines are standing. None of these cars have damage to their windows. When the wind velocity gets above 120 miles an hour, it starts to pick up pebbles and rocks, and the wind is strong enough to pick up large rocks, and those rocks fly into windows of cars and beat on the side of cars. They break out windows in people's homes. They didn't get this sort of thing here. You see a power line down there. It might have been a power line, something in the road. Anytime you see a power line, you got to assume that it's a live power line. But as far as overall damage in the city of Wilmington goes, I don't know. It doesn't look. It's certainly not catastrophic. It doesn't look awful. And man, were we ever spared. Think of this storm if it had continued with forward progress the way it was a couple of days ago and remained at a Category 4. We'd be in the middle of an absolutely historic hurricane that would have sadly decimated much of this coast. But the good Lord willing, the creeks did rise, and they have 604,000 people without power. But Mother Nature slowed down just a little bit, didn't produce the winds that would pick up rocks and throw limbs through the air and would have caused lots of damage. Most of these cars would have had damage. These houses would have had damage. You can see people out and about right now. They'd prefer that folks in Wilmington not be driving around unless they have to. You can see there's another limb in the road, another piece of a tree down. But this seems like a really good news story here. I'm not sure where these pictures are even coming from. Is this AP? What is this? APTN? This is Associated Press Television News that has a sophisticated system where they can just drive around town and give us an idea of what it's like. So you can see lots of stuff in the road, lots of leaves down, but you don't see power lines down, you don't see trees down. Thankfully, you don't see a lot of people out and about. So Wilmington fared pretty well. Just off the coast from Wilmington, as I mentioned, Wrightsville Beach, they've had a heck of a lot of flooding. A lot of power lines down. Nobody has power in this region, or at least most people don't. You heard the alderman there from New Bern, which is up the coast and inland a little bit, saying that they've been able to have some power restored. That has not been the case. It's our understanding, at least, in New Bern, because there are 604,000 people in North Carolina without power right now. Duke Energy is the company that supplies power to most of this region. And Duke Energy has about 4 million customers, if my memory serves. And they had projected, based on how strong the storm was a couple of days ago, that 1 to 3 million of their customers might be without power. Not all that's residences. Of course, businesses are considered customers as well. So they have 4 million customers, and they thought 1 to 3 million might lose power at one point or another during this storm. So far, 604,000 have. And the storm is really still on the move. It's moving inland into some small communities. Will eventually dump a bunch of rain, the National Weather Service tells us, on the city of Raleigh and some other inland areas. Some areas had 40 inches of rain along the coast. But here in Wilmington, the latest numbers that I had on rain in Wilmington said that Wilmington had gotten right at 18 inches of rain. So you think about that, 18 inches of rain in 2 days, that's a lot for any system to absorb. But you don't see standing water in the streets. It looks like the sewer systems are holding up. The power lines are good. You don't see windows blown out in anybody's homes. And all in all, the city of Wilmington, from this drive along from Associated Press Television News, looks mighty, mighty good.